The crystal chandelier above the table cast perfect light across the white tablecloth, making the envelope seem to glow as it slid across the surface toward me. I watched it move, my hands folded calmly in my lap, my face revealing nothing. Inside that envelope was $50,000 in cash. Outside this restaurant, I had $10 million worth of shares in the company owned by the man sitting across from me. But Robert Hutchinson didn't know that. His wife Patricia didn't know that either. And my husband Brandon, sitting beside me in his expensive navy suit, definitely didn't know that. "Simone," Robert said, his voice carrying that particular tone wealthy men use when they think they're being generous. "You seem like a nice girl. We're not trying to be cruel here. We're trying to be practical." I let my eyes drift from the envelope to his face. Robert Hutchinson was 62 years old, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. His company, Hutchinson Global Technologies, had been struggling before my investment 3 years ago. I'd watched the stock prices, seen the mismanagement, and recognized the potential. When I bought in anonymously through my shell corporation, I'd saved his legacy without him ever knowing. "Practical," I repeated softly as if I was trying to understand the word. Patricia leaned forward. She wore a burgundy dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her diamond necklace caught the light. "Dear, you have to understand. Brandon has a certain position to maintain. His future in the company depends on the right kind of marriage. The right kind of wife." I glanced at Brandon. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at his wine glass instead, his jaw tight. 3 years of marriage, and this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not hoping for, but expecting. I'd known this dinner invitation would reveal something. I just hadn't expected them to be quite this direct. "The right kind of wife," I said. "You mean someone with money?" "Someone from the right background," Patricia corrected, though we both knew she meant the same thing. "Someone who understands our world. Someone who can help Brandon advance, not hold him back." I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversations around us. Other wealthy families having their perfect dinners. Other people in their beautiful clothes playing their beautiful games. "Brandon," I said quietly, "you're going to let them do this?" He finally looked at me. There was something in his eyes I'd seen growing there over the past 6 months. Shame maybe. Or resentment. "Simone, maybe we should just hear them out." Hear them out. As if this was a reasonable business proposal and not his parents offering me money to divorce him. Robert cleared his throat. "We know you come from humble beginnings. Your mother raised you alone. You work at that little nonprofit. You wear thrift store clothes." His eyes traveled over my simple green dress, the one I'd chosen specifically for this dinner. "There's no shame in that, but Brandon needs someone who can match his ambitions." I could have told him that this little nonprofit was actually a community investment fund I'd started that had turned 20 young entrepreneurs into successful business owners. I could have mentioned that my thrift store clothes were a choice, not a necessity. I could have explained that I had more money in my personal investment portfolio than Brandon would see in his lifetime. But I didn't. "How much is in the envelope?" I asked instead. Patricia's face showed relief. She thought I was considering it. $50,000. Good. Enough to start over somewhere new. Enough to find someone more suitable to your background. "And if I take it?" "You sign the divorce papers," Robert said, pulling another set of documents from his briefcase. "Clean break. You walk away. Brandon moves forward with his life." I looked at the envelope again. $50,000. They thought that was enough to buy me. They thought I was so desperate, so poor, so insignificant that I'd take their cash and disappear. They had no idea that I held the power to destroy everything Robert had built. "Brandon," I said one more time, "this is really what you want?" He shifted in his seat. "Simone, you have to admit we're from different worlds. Maybe my parents have a point. Maybe we rushed into this. You'd be better off with someone from your own level. Your own level." The words hung in the air between us. I'd met Brandon 3 years ago at a coffee shop. He'd been charming, funny, and seemingly down to earth. He told me he loved that I wasn't materialistic. He said he was tired of women who only wanted him for his family's money. He claimed he wanted something real. I believed him. Or maybe I'd wanted to believe him. After 2 previous relationships where men had only seen dollar signs when they looked at me, I decided to try something different. I'd hidden my wealth, lived simply, and let Brandon think I was just a regular girl working at a nonprofit. For a while it had been nice. He'd been attentive and sweet. But slowly things had changed. He started making comments about my clothes. He'd suggest I get a better job. He'd compare me to his friends' wives, women with family money and country club memberships. And then 6 months ago I discovered the affair. Tanya from his office. A woman who wore designer suits and drove a Mercedes. A woman who fit into his world in ways he'd decided I never would. I hadn't confronted him. Instead, I'd started documenting everything. Phone records, hotel receipts, photos. I built my case carefully the same way I built my investment portfolio. And I'd accepted this dinner invitation knowing exactly what it would reveal about the people I'd married into. "Can I have a moment to think?" I asked, my voice small and uncertain. I was playing the part they expected. "Of course," Patricia said, her tone warm now that she thought she'd won. "Take your time, dear." I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy in my hands. Inside was their contempt wrapped in cash. Inside was their certainty that I was worth so little. I opened it slowly and looked at the neat stacks of $100 bills. $50,000. To them, it was a small price to pay to remove an inconvenience. To most people, it was life-changing money. To me, it was insulting. I closed the envelope and set it back on the table. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app, the one connected to my personal account, not the Shell Corporation. The balance showed clearly, $2.4 million. Just my liquid assets, not counting the investments. I turned the phone around and slid it across the table, right next to their envelope. "I don't need your money," I said simply. Robert's face went pale. Patricia's mouth fell open. Brandon grabbed the phone and stared at the screen. "What is this?" he whispered. "Is this real?" "Very real," I said. "Did you really think I worked at a non-profit because I had no other options? I work there because I believe in it. I own it, actually. Along with several other investments you know nothing about." "You've been lying to me," Brandon said, his voice rising. "This whole time you've been lying." I almost laughed. The man who'd been sleeping with his coworker for 6 months was accusing me of dishonesty. "I chose not to share everything about myself," I corrected. "Just like you chose not to share everything about Tanya." His face went white. Patricia looked confused. Robert's eyes narrowed. "Who's Tanya?" Patricia asked. "Brandon's girlfriend," I said calmly. "They've been together since June. She works in his department. They usually meet at the Grandview Hotel on Thursday afternoons." The table went completely silent. Around us, other diners continued their meals, unaware of the explosion happening at our table. Brandon stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You're insane. You're making things up because you're embarrassed about this dinner." "Am I?" I pulled another item from my purse. A small folder. Inside were printed photos. Brandon and Tanya entering the hotel. Brandon and Tanya at a restaurant across town. Text message screenshots I'd obtained through perfectly legal means. I spread them on the table like playing cards. Patricia grabbed one of the photos, her hand shaking. Robert's face had gone from pale to red. "Brandon," Robert said, his voice dangerous. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." But Brandon couldn't speak. He stood there, frozen, his perfect life crumbling around him. I stood up smoothly, picking up my purse. I left the envelope on the table. "Keep your money," I said. "You're going to need it. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce." "And Robert?" I looked directly at the man who'd thought he could buy me off. "You might want to be nicer to the people you underestimate. You never know who they really are." I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, leaving them with their shock and their cash and their ruined dinner. They had no idea that the real shock was still coming. They had no idea that the anonymous investor who owned $10 million worth of Hutchinson Global Technology stock was about to make some very big demands. They had no idea that the poor, simple girl they tried to buy off was about to buy them. 3 years earlier, I'd been sitting in that same coffee shop where I met Brandon, reading investment reports on my laptop. I was 26 years old and had just made my second million through a series of smart tech startup investments. My mother had died the year before, and I was still processing the grief while trying to figure out what to do with the wealth she'd helped me build. My mother, Teresa Robinson, had been a financial advisor who'd clawed her way up from nothing. She'd raised me alone after my father left when I was 2, and she taught me everything about money. Not just how to make it, but how to respect it, grow it, and use it wisely. "Money is a tool, not an identity," she'd always said. "Don't let it define you and don't let it attract the wrong people." I'd learned that lesson the hard way. My first serious boyfriend, Tyler, had seemed perfect until he discovered my growing bank account. Suddenly, every conversation became about what we could buy, where we could travel, what he deserved as my partner. When I refused to fund his half-baked business idea, he left, calling me selfish. The second one, Marcus. Wait, I can't use that name. The second one, Greg, had been even worse. He'd proposed after 6 months, but I'd found his browser history showing searches for how to access wife's bank account and marital property laws. When I confronted him, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. After Greg, I decided to try something different. I'd hide my wealth and see if I could find someone who actually loved me for who I was, not what I had. That's when Brandon walked into the coffee shop. He'd been on his phone, frustrated, talking about a work project. When he sat down at the table next to mine, he'd noticed my laptop screen and made a joke about stock market volatility. We'd started talking. He was handsome, funny, and surprisingly humble for someone from a wealthy family. My dad's always on me about joining the family business, he'd said. But I want to make it on my own first, you know? Prove I'm not just riding his coattails. I'd like that. It seemed genuine. We'd dated for 6 months before he proposed. He'd taken me to a simple park, no elaborate production, just him and me and a heartfelt speech about wanting to build a life together. He said he didn't care that I wasn't rich. He said he loved that I was real. I'd said yes, pushing away the small voice in my head that wondered if I was making a mistake by not telling him the truth. The wedding had been small. His parents had been polite but distant. I could see Patricia mentally calculating my worth based on my department store dress and lack of jewelry. Robert had asked what my father did, and when I explained he'd left when I was young, I saw the judgment in his eyes. But Brandon had held my hand and told me not to worry about them. They'll come around, he'd promised. They just need time to see how amazing you are. The first year of marriage had been mostly good. We'd lived in a modest apartment because I'd insisted I wanted to keep working and saving. Brandon had his job at his father's company, making decent money but nothing extraordinary. He'd seemed content with our simple life. But during year 2 things shifted. He started spending more time at work. He'd come home talking about office dynamics, about who was moving up and who was getting promoted. He started mentioning his co-workers' wives, women with family money who threw fundraiser galas and sat on charity boards. Tanya's wife just organized this amazing event, he'd say. Wait, Tanya's a woman in my story. Let me fix that. Craig's wife just organized this amazing event, he'd say. Raised like $200,000 for children's hospitals. It was in all the society pages. The comparisons got more frequent. Why didn't I want to join certain clubs? Why didn't I shop at better stores? Wouldn't I be happier with a more ambitious career? I'd started to see the truth. Brandon didn't actually want a simple life. He wanted his parents' life. He wanted the status and the recognition. And I, in my thrift store clothes and nonprofit job, was becoming an embarrassment. That's when I'd made a decision. I'd started looking into his father's company more seriously. Hutchinson Global Technologies had been a mid-sized firm specializing in software solutions for healthcare systems. They'd had good products but terrible management. Robert Hutchinson was brilliant at technology but hopeless at business strategy. The company was hemorrhaging money through bad contracts and poor investment choices. I'd seen the potential immediately. With proper financial restructuring and some key strategic changes, the company could triple in value. So I'd created a shell corporation, Apex Holdings, and I'd approached them with an investment offer. $10 million for preferred stock and a seat at major decision-making tables. Robert had been desperate enough to accept immediately. He never knew that Apex Holdings was me. The paperwork went through lawyers and financial managers. I attended board meetings virtually under a pseudonym, my face hidden, my voice modified. To them, I was just a mysterious investor who'd saved their company. And I had saved it. Within a year, I'd helped them renegotiate their worst contracts, streamline their operations, and land 3 major new clients. The stock value had increased by 40%. Robert had taken all the credit publicly, but in private board meetings, he knew the anonymous investor was the real force behind the turnaround. Meanwhile, at home, my marriage was falling apart. Brandon was coming home later and later. His phone was always face down. He'd started going to the gym at odd hours and taking more business trips than his position required. I'd hired a private investigator in June. It had taken less than a week to confirm what I already knew. Brandon was having an affair with Tanya, a woman in his department. She came from money. Her father was a judge. Her mother was on every important social committee in the city. She was exactly what his parents wanted for him. The investigator's report had been thorough. Photos, timestamps, credit card receipts for hotel rooms and expensive dinners. Brandon had been using the credit card I didn't know about, one probably funded by his parents. I'd sat in my home office, the one Brandon thought I used for my little nonprofit work, and I'd read through everything. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt validated. My instinct to hide my wealth had been correct. Brandon had never loved me. He'd loved the idea of me, the noble gesture of marrying down, the temporary rebellion against his parents' expectations. But when rebellion became inconvenient, he'd found someone more suitable. I'd started planning that night. I'd contacted my lawyer, Jerome Patterson, a sharp man in his 50s who'd helped me structure my business deals. I'd explained the situation and asked him to start preparing divorce papers. Get everything documented, he'd advised. Financial records, evidence of infidelity, anything that shows his deception. In this state, infidelity matters in divorce proceedings. I'd also reached out to my financial advisor, Candace Moore. She was younger than Jerome, only 35, but she was brilliant. She'd helped me grow my initial investments into the portfolio I had now. I want to be ready to move quickly, I'd told her. When this divorce happens, I need all my assets protected and clearly separate from anything he might claim. Already on it, she'd said. And Simone? Make him regret underestimating you. That had been 4 months ago. Since then, I'd been gathering evidence, securing my finances, and waiting for the right moment to act. When Brandon had mentioned his parents wanted to have dinner with us, I'd known immediately what it meant. They'd found out about my simple lifestyle, my lack of social connections, my humble job. They'd decided I wasn't good enough, and they were going to try to remove me from the picture. I dressed carefully for that dinner. A simple green dress from Target, minimal jewelry, no designer anything. I'd played the part perfectly, and they'd walked right into my trap. Now, walking out of that restaurant, I felt the weight of 3 years of pretending lift off my shoulders. No more hiding. No more playing small. No more letting people underestimate me because I chose not to show off my wealth. Brandon had chosen Tanya because she fit his world. His parents had tried to buy me off because they thought I was worthless. They were all about to learn a very expensive lesson about assumptions. I got into my car, a modest Honda Civic that I actually loved despite being able to afford much better, and I pulled out my phone. I had several calls to make. Jerome needed to file the divorce papers. Candace needed to prepare for some strategic financial moves. And I needed to schedule a very important board meeting at Hutchinson Global Technologies. The anonymous investor was about to step into the light. And when she did, the Hutchinson family would realize that the woman they tried to throw away was the only thing keeping their legacy alive. The first sign of Brandon's affair had been subtle. It was a Thursday in June and he'd come home smelling different. Not like another woman's perfume the way it happens in movies, but like expensive hotel soap. The kind of soap that doesn't exist in regular office bathrooms. How was work? I'd asked, stirring pasta sauce at the stove. Long, he'd answered, loosening his blue tie. Had to stay late for a project review. But his shirt had been freshly pressed, not wrinkled from a long day at the office. His hair had that slightly damp look of a recent shower. And his eyes hadn't quite met mine when he spoke. I'd said nothing. Instead, I'd served dinner, asked about his day, and acted like everything was normal. But inside, something had clicked into place. All the late nights, all the sudden gym memberships, all the new attention to his appearance. The pieces had been there all along. I'd just been choosing not to see them. That night, after Brandon fell asleep, I'd gone through his phone. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to know. His messages to Tanya were careful, coded in ways that could be explained as work-related if questioned. Meeting tomorrow at the usual place? Could mean a conference room or a hotel room. Can't wait to finish our project could mean anything. But the timestamps told the real story. Messages sent at odd hours. Gaps in his location history where his phone had been turned off. Credit card charges I didn't recognize on statements that came to his office instead of our home. I'd put the phone back exactly where he'd left it and gone to my own office. That's when I'd made the first call to the private investigator. I need documentation, I'd told him. Photos, locations, times. Everything that would hold up legally if needed. His name was Frank Chin. Wait, Chin is forbidden. His name was Frank Morrison and he'd been recommended by Jerome. Most people wait until they're sure before they call me, Frank had said. You already sound sure. I am, I'd answered. I just need proof. The proof had come quickly. Within 3 days, Frank had photos of Brandon and Tanya entering the Grandview Hotel. Within a week, he had their pattern mapped out. Thursday afternoons, always the same hotel, always room 412. They'd been careful but not careful enough. Tanya was 29, 3 years younger than me. She had straight black hair always styled in a perfect bob, and she wore the kind of tailored suits that cost a month's salary for most people. Her father was Judge Harold Peterson, a name that carried weight in social circles. Her mother, Gloria Peterson, chaired half the charity boards in the city. She was perfect for Brandon. Or at least, perfect for the Brandon his parents wanted him to be. I'd watched from across the street one Thursday as they'd left the hotel separately, 20 minutes apart. Tanya had checked her reflection in a compact mirror, reapplied her lipstick, and walked to her silver Mercedes with complete confidence. Brandon had checked his phone, straightened his tie, and headed back toward his office. Neither of them had looked guilty. They'd looked satisfied. Like people who'd gotten away with something. That night, Brandon had come home and kissed my cheek. "Long day," he'd said again. "I'm exhausted." I'd nodded and served dinner. Chicken and rice, simple and cheap because that's what we did. We lived modestly. We saved money. We were building a future together. Except we weren't. He was building a future with someone else while keeping me around for appearances. Over the next few months, I'd watched the affair continue while I quietly prepared my exit. I'd documented every suspicious moment, every lie, every Thursday afternoon disappearance. I'd met with Jerome to understand my legal options. I'd met with Candace to restructure my assets in ways that protected them completely. And I'd continued my work with Hutchinson Global Technologies, making the decisions that kept the company profitable while Robert took credit for the turnaround. The board meetings happened monthly. I'd attend virtually, my face pixelated on the screen, my voice modified to sound neutral and androgynous. The other board members knew me only as A. Harper, the representative from Apex Holdings. They knew I'd invested $10 million when the company desperately needed it. They knew my financial recommendations had been right every single time. But they didn't know I was a 30-year-old woman. They definitely didn't know I was married to the CEO's son. In August, there had been a particularly tense meeting. Robert had wanted to pursue a contract with a healthcare network that I knew was financially unstable. I'd reviewed their books through my contacts and seen the warning signs. They were 6 months from bankruptcy. This contract represents a $15 million opportunity, Robert had argued during the video call. We can't pass this up. The opportunity is actually a liability, I'd countered, my modified voice flat and professional. Hampton Healthcare Network is drowning in debt. They've already defaulted on payments to 3 other vendors. If we sign with them, we'll never see full payment, and we'll waste resources on a dead-end project. How can you possibly know their financial situation? Robert had demanded. I make it my business to know, I'd answered. That's why you accepted my investment. I do my research. If you pursue this contract, Apex Holdings will vote against it and will reconsider our position with this company. The threat had been clear. The other board members had sided with me. Robert had backed down, angry but outmaneuvered. 3 months later, Hampton Healthcare Network had filed for bankruptcy, exactly as I'd predicted. The board's trust in A. Harper had grown stronger. Robert's resentment had deepened. At home, Brandon had mentioned his father's frustration. Dad's dealing with this anonymous investor who thinks they run the company, he'd complained. Just because they put in some money, they act like they own the place. Well, don't they partially own it? I'd asked innocently. If they invested $10 million? It's the principle, Brandon had said. Dad built this company from nothing. Now he has to answer to some faceless person on a screen who probably knows nothing about technology. I'd bitten my tongue to keep from smiling. If only he knew. By October, I'd had everything I needed for the divorce. Bank statements showing my separate assets. Documentation of Brandon's affair. Legal papers ready to file. I just needed the right moment, the right catalyst. That's when Brandon had mentioned the dinner with his parents. They want to get to know you better, he'd said, which I'd immediately known was a lie. His parents had never shown any interest in getting to know me better in 3 years of marriage. When? I'd asked. Next Friday. At Romano's. That Italian place downtown. Dress nice. Dress nice. As if I needed instructions. As if I was some charity case they were taking out for a treat. I'd agreed immediately, already planning what I would wear. Something simple. Something that would reinforce every assumption they'd made about me. Something that would make them confident enough to show their true colors. The week leading up to the dinner, I'd finalized everything. Jerome had the divorce papers ready to file. Candace had restructured my investment portfolio to ensure not a single dollar could be claimed as marital property. Frank had delivered the final investigative report, complete with enough evidence to prove infidelity beyond any doubt. And I'd scheduled a special board meeting for Hutchinson Global Technologies to take place exactly 1 week after the dinner. The meeting request had come from A. Harper, the anonymous investor, citing concerns about company leadership and direction. Robert had been furious, but he couldn't refuse. The bylaws I'd insisted on when I invested gave me the right to call such meetings. The night before the dinner, I'd stood in my closet looking at my clothes. On one side hung the simple, inexpensive outfits I wore when playing the role of humble Simone. On the other side, hidden behind a false panel, hung the designer pieces I never wore around Brandon. Silk blouses, tailored pants, dresses that cost thousands of dollars. 2 wardrobes. 2 lives. The fake one I showed to my husband and his family, and the real one I kept hidden. Tomorrow at that dinner they would offer me money to disappear. They would insult me, demean me, and try to pay me off like I was some kind of problem to be solved with cash. And I would let them. I would take every insult, every condescending word, every dismissive look. I would document their cruelty and their arrogance. Because in 1 week, I would show them exactly who they'd been insulting. And by then it would be too late for them to take any of it back. Romano's was the kind of restaurant where they didn't list prices on the menu and the waiters spoke in hushed tones. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings. The carpet was so thick your feet sank into it. Every table had fresh roses and silver vases. This was where people came to see and be seen, where deals were made over wine that cost more per bottle than most people's car payments. I'd worn my green Target dress on purpose. It was pretty enough to be appropriate but cheap enough to be obvious. I'd paired it with simple flats and minimal jewelry. My hair was pulled back in a basic ponytail. No expensive salon styling, no designer accessories. I looked exactly like what they expected, a poor girl out of her depth. Brandon had picked me up wearing his charcoal suit, the one his father had bought him. He'd looked at my outfit and sighed but said nothing. The drive to the restaurant had been silent except for the radio. "Just be polite," he'd finally said as we pulled into the valet parking area. "My parents want to talk about some things." "What things?" I'd asked, though I already knew. "Just family stuff. The future. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene." As if I was the one who should be worried about behavior. As if I was the problem. Robert and Patricia had already been seated when we arrived. The hostess had led us to a corner table, private and secluded. Perfect for a conversation you didn't want overheard. Patricia had looked at my dress with barely concealed disappointment. Robert had shaken my hand with the grip of someone touching something distasteful but necessary. "Simone," Patricia had said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "So glad you could join us." As if I'd had a choice. As if this was a friendly family dinner and not an ambush. We'd ordered appetizers I barely tasted. Patricia had made small talk about the weather, about the restaurant's new chef, about anything except what we were really there to discuss. It was a technique I recognized from business negotiations. Make your opponent comfortable before you strike. But I wasn't comfortable. I was alert, watching, waiting. It was during the main course that Robert had cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Simone, Patricia and I wanted to have this dinner because we care about Brandon's future. And by extension your future as well." "Of course," I'd said softly, playing my part. "Brandon has tremendous potential in the company," Robert had continued. "He's being groomed for a senior position. Possibly even to take over when I retire." I glanced at Brandon. He'd been staring at his plate, not contributing, not defending me, not doing anything except sitting there like a coward. "That's wonderful," I'd said. "I know how hard he works." "Yes," Patricia had interjected. "But in our world, advancement isn't just about hard work. It's about presentation. It's about connections. It's about having the right partner who can help open doors." There it was. The setup. "I try to support Brandon however I can," I'd offered. "We know you do, dear," Patricia had said, her tone patronizing. "But you have to understand there are certain expectations. Brandon will be attending galas, hosting clients, moving in circles that require a certain level of sophistication. Sophistication. Code word for wealth. Code word for status. Code word for everything I supposedly lacked. I can learn," I'd said, keeping my voice small and uncertain. "I can try to fit in better." "It's not about learning," Robert had said bluntly. "It's about belonging. You come from a very different background, Simone. Your mother raised you alone. You went to a state school. You work at a non-profit that barely pays minimum wage. Every word had been chosen to cut. Every statement had been designed to make me feel lesser. I know I'm not from a wealthy family," I'd admitted. "But I love Brandon. Doesn't that matter?" Patricia had reached across the table and patted my hand. The gesture had been meant to seem comforting, but it had felt condescending. "Of course it matters, dear. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes we have to be practical." That's when Robert had pulled out the envelope. It had been in his briefcase, waiting for this exact moment. He'd placed it on the table between us, and even without opening it, I'd known what was inside. "We want to help you," Robert had said. "We want to help you start fresh somewhere new. Somewhere you might find someone more suited to your situation." I'd stared at the envelope, letting the silence stretch. Let them think I was processing. Let them think I was hurt and confused. "How much?" I'd finally asked, my voice barely a whisper. $50,000, Patricia had said. "Enough to move, to start over, to find a new path. All you have to do is sign divorce papers and leave quietly. No drama. No social media posts. No attempts to contact Brandon or embarrass the family." I'd looked at Brandon again. "You knew about this?" He'd shifted in his seat. "Simone, maybe it's for the best. We've been growing apart anyway. This way we can both move on to better situations." Better situations. He meant situations where he could be with Tanya, where he could have the kind of wife his parents approved of, where he didn't have to be embarrassed by his poor spouse. "You've been cheating on me," I'd said, not as an accusation but as a simple statement of fact. The table had gone still. Patricia's smile had faltered. Robert's eyes had narrowed. "That's ridiculous," Brandon had said quickly. "You're being paranoid." "Am I?" I'd reached into my purse, moving slowly, deliberately. "Because I have photos that say otherwise." The envelope full of money had still been sitting on the table. I placed my folder next to it. The contrast had been perfect. Their bribe and my truth side by side. Patricia had grabbed one of the photos, her manicured nails clutching the paper. It had shown Brandon and Tanya entering the Grandview Hotel, his hand on her back, her face turned toward him with obvious affection. "This could be anything," Robert had blustered. "This could be a work meeting." "At a hotel?" I pulled out more photos. "Here they are at dinner. Here they are in his car. Here they are kissing in the parking garage at his office building. Would you like me to continue?" Brandon's face had gone white, then red. "You had me followed?" "I had my suspicions confirmed," I'd corrected. "And you might want to be more careful about which credit card you use for your affair. The one from your parents' account, really? Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Robert had grabbed the photos from Patricia, shuffling through them. His face had contorted with anger, but I'd noticed it hadn't been directed at Brandon. It had been directed at the situation, at being caught, at the mess this created. "Who is she?" Patricia had demanded, looking at the pictures of Tanya. "Her name is Tanya Peterson," I'd said. "Judge Peterson's daughter. Gloria Peterson's daughter. I believe you know the family." Understanding had dawned on Patricia's face. "Harold Peterson's daughter?" "The same." Robert and Patricia had exchanged a look. In that look I'd seen everything. Relief that Brandon had chosen someone appropriate. Frustration that he'd been sloppy about the affair. Calculation about how to manage the situation. But not 1 ounce of sympathy for me. Not one moment of shame about what they'd tried to do. That's when I decided to show them exactly who they'd been trying to buy off. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My personal account, the one showing my liquid assets. The one showing I had more money sitting in one account than most people saw in their lifetimes. "Before we continue this conversation," I'd said, my voice no longer small or uncertain, "I think you should see something." I'd slid the phone across the table, right next to their envelope of cash. The screen had glowed in the candlelight, the numbers clear and undeniable. $2.4 million. Just sitting there. Just waiting. The look on their faces had been worth 3 years of pretending to be poor. "What is this?" Robert had whispered. "My money," I'd said simply. "Well, part of it. I have other accounts. Investment portfolios. Property. The nonprofit you think barely pays minimum wage? I own it. I started it. It's mine." Brandon had grabbed the phone, his hands shaking. "This can't be real. You've been lying to me? This whole time." "I chose not to share my financial information," I'd corrected. "There's a difference. And given what I'm looking at now, it was clearly the right choice." "You deceived me," Brandon had said, his voice rising. "You let me think you were poor. And you let me think you were faithful," I'd countered. "So I guess we're both disappointed." Patricia had been staring at the phone screen like it was a snake. "Where did you get this money?" "I earned it. I invested it. I grew it. My mother taught me about financial literacy before she died. I used what she taught me to build a portfolio. I've been doing quite well, actually." Robert had been doing calculations in his head. I could see it in his eyes. If I had this much money, if I had connections they didn't know about, if I had resources they'd underestimated, then I was dangerous. Simone, he'd said carefully, his tone completely different from before. Perhaps we've all made some mistakes here. Perhaps we should talk about this more calmly. I am calm, I'd said. I'm very calm. I'm so calm that I'm going to walk out of here, take your insulting envelope of money with me as a souvenir, and let my lawyer handle the divorce proceedings. Wait, Brandon had reached for my arm but I'd pulled away. We need to talk about this. We need to figure out what's real and what's not. What's real is that you've been cheating on me for 6 months, I'd said. What's real is that your parents just tried to pay me to divorce you because they thought I was worthless. What's real is that I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not to make you all comfortable. I'd stood up, smoothing down my cheap green dress one last time. Tomorrow I'd burn this dress. Tomorrow I'd start wearing my real clothes. Tomorrow I'd stop hiding. The divorce papers will be filed on Monday, I'd continued. I suggest you get your own lawyer. And Robert. I'd looked at him directly. You might want to check in with your board of directors. I hear your anonymous investor is calling a special meeting next week. Apparently, there are concerns about company leadership. I'd walked away before they could respond, leaving them with their shock and their photos and their useless envelope of cash. Behind me, I'd heard Patricia's voice, sharp and angry, asking Brandon what he'd been thinking. I'd heard Robert saying something about damage control. But I hadn't looked back. I'd walked through that expensive restaurant with my head high, past the wealthy diners and the crystal chandeliers and the hushed conversations. I'd walked out into the night air and felt lighter than I'd felt in 3 years. The trap had worked perfectly. They'd revealed exactly who they were. And now I was free to reveal exactly who I was. And in 1 week at that board meeting, they would learn the most important truth of all. The anonymous investor who'd saved their company, the mysterious A. Harper who they'd been resenting and fearing and obeying for 3 years, was the same woman they just tried to throw away like trash. The morning after the disastrous dinner, I woke up in my own home for the last time. That's how I'd started thinking of it. Not our home. My home. I'd bought it with my own money, put the deed in my name alone, and let Brandon believe we were renting from a private owner. Just another layer in the life I'd constructed to protect myself. I made coffee and sat in my office, the room Brandon rarely entered because he thought it was just where I did nonprofit paperwork. The walls were lined with bookshelves, but behind one section of books was a small safe. Inside that safe were documents that told the real story of my life. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, business licenses. I pulled them out now, spreading them on my desk. Time to stop hiding. My mother, Teresa, had been brilliant with money. She'd grown up in poverty, raised by a grandmother who'd survived on Social Security and food stamps. Teresa had sworn she'd never be poor again and she'd kept that promise. She'd put herself through community college while working 2 jobs, then transferred to a state university for a finance degree. By the time I was born, she was working as a financial advisor at a small firm. She'd raised me alone after my father left. I had vague memories of him, mostly just the sound of arguing and the smell of whiskey. When I was 3, he'd disappeared completely, leaving us with nothing but debt. Teresa had paid it off within 2 years while also saving for my future. Money is freedom, she told me constantly. It's not about being rich. It's about having choices. About not being trapped by someone else's decisions. She taught me about compound interest when I was 8. About the stock market when I was 10. About real estate investment when I was 12. By the time I was 14, I had my own investment account with money from summer jobs, growing steadily under her guidance. Don't tell anyone about this, she'd warned me. People treat you differently when they know you have money. Some try to use you. Some resent you. Very few actually see you for who you really are. When I was 23, Teresa had died of cancer. It had been fast, brutal, and unfair. She'd left me $500,000 from life insurance and investments, along with a letter of instructions on how to grow it. Don't spend it on things, the letter had said. Invest it. Be patient. Be smart. Make it work for you. And when you find someone to share your life with, make sure they love you before they know what you have. You deserve real love, baby girl. Not love for what you can provide. I'd followed her advice. I'd invested in tech startups, in real estate, in carefully researched opportunities. Within 2 years, I'd doubled her inheritance. Within 5 years, I'd made my first $1 million. By the time I met Brandon, I was worth over $3 million and still growing. But I'd remembered her warning about people treating you differently. I'd already experienced it with Tyler and Greg. So when Brandon came along, I decided to test him. I'd hidden my wealth and lived simply, waiting to see if he'd love me for me. For a while I thought he did. Now I knew better. He'd loved the idea of me. The noble choice. The departure from his parents' expectations. But when the novelty wore off, when the reality of having a poor wife became inconvenient, he'd shown his true character. I looked at the documents spread across my desk. Property holdings in 3 states. Stock portfolios worth over $5 million. The deed to this house, purchased for cash 3 years ago. Brandon thought we were paying $2,000 a month in rent. In reality, I owned the place outright. The rent money went into a separate account I controlled. Then there was Apex Holdings, my shell corporation. I'd created it specifically to invest in Hutchinson Global Technologies. The name was generic enough to be forgettable, and the structure was complex enough that tracing it back to me would require significant effort and legal authority. As far as anyone at the company knew, Apex Holdings was managed by a team of investors who preferred to remain anonymous. The truth was simpler. Apex Holdings was me, a lawyer, and an accountant. That was it. I made the decisions. I attended the board meetings. I held $10 million worth of preferred stock in a company that was now worth significantly more thanks to my guidance. My phone rang. Jerome, my lawyer. "Good morning," he said. "I heard the dinner went exactly as expected." "Better than expected," I replied. "They gave me $50,000 to disappear and insulted everything about me. All while Brandon sat there and let it happen." "Perfect. That strengthens our case considerably." "And the photos?" "Showed them. They weren't even sorry about the affair. Just embarrassed that it was documented." "Good. I'll have the divorce papers filed Monday morning. Given the evidence of infidelity and the separate nature of your assets, this should be clean and fast. He has no claim to anything you own." "What about his claim that I deceived him by hiding my wealth?" Jerome laughed. "That's not grounds for anything. You weren't married when you earned that money. You kept it in your own name. You never commingled funds or made joint investments. As far as the law is concerned, you simply maintained your financial privacy, which is your right. And the prenup I refused to sign when his parents pushed for one? Works in your favor. You told them at the time that you had nothing to protect and saw no need for one. Turns out you had plenty to protect, but that doesn't change the legality. No prenup means no prenup. Your assets are yours." After I hung up with Jerome, I called Candace. "The board meeting is set for next Friday," she said without preamble. "Robert is furious. He's been trying to reach A. Harper all week, but of course A. Harper isn't taking his calls." "What's the agenda?" I asked. "Leadership review. Financial oversight. Strategic direction. All the things that sound official and boring but actually give you the power to make significant demands." "And my identity reveal?" "Saved for the end. Maximum impact. I've prepared the presentation materials. When you tell them who you are, they'll see your credentials, your track record, your holdings. They won't be able to dismiss you." "How many board members will be there?" "All 7. Plus Robert as CEO and his CFO. It's going to be a full house." "Perfect. I want witnesses." That afternoon I started packing. Not everything, just the essentials for now. Clothes, personal items, documents. I'd come back for the rest later with movers. I'd already rented a beautiful apartment downtown, a 2-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. The rent was $4,000 a month, twice what Brandon thought we paid here. I'd signed the lease in my own name and put down 6 months in advance. I was standing in the closet, pulling my designer clothes from their hiding place, when I heard the front door open. Brandon was home early. "Simone?" he called. I didn't answer. I just continued packing, methodically folding silk blouses and tailored pants into boxes. Real clothes. Expensive clothes. The wardrobe I'd been hiding for 3 years. He appeared in the bedroom doorway and stopped short. "What are you doing?" "Packing," I said without looking at him. "Where did those clothes come from?" He stared at the designer pieces I was folding. "I've never seen any of this before." "That's because I didn't wear it around you." He walked into the room, looking around like he'd entered a stranger's home. "Simone, we need to talk about last night." "No, we don't. I'm sorry about my parents. I'm sorry about the money. That was wrong of them." "You're sorry they embarrassed you," I corrected. "You're not sorry they tried to buy me off. You were going to let them do it." I was confused. I was angry that you'd been lying about having money. I finally looked at him. "You were angry? You've been sleeping with Tanya for 6 months, and you're angry that I kept my finances private? That's different." "How?" He couldn't answer. He just stood there watching me pack, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and something that might have been regret. "How much money do you actually have?" he finally asked. "More than you'll ever see," I replied. and none of it is yours. We're married. In this state, marital property is divided. Good thing all my money is separate property then. Earned before the marriage. Kept in my own accounts. Never commingled with anything you had access to. My lawyer assures me you have no claim to any of it. His face went pale. You've already talked to a lawyer? Of course I have. Do you think I walked into that dinner unprepared? I knew exactly what your parents were going to do. I knew you'd let them do it. I've been ready for this divorce for months. Months? He sat down on the edge of the bed. When did you find out about Tanya? June. The first Thursday you came home smelling like hotel soap. He put his head in his hands. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to know how long you'd keep lying. I wanted to document everything. And I wanted to see if you'd defend me when your parents attacked. You failed every test, Brandon. I love you, he said, but it sounded hollow even to him. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You loved rebelling against your parents. But you never loved me. If you had, you wouldn't have been embarrassed by my cheap clothes. You wouldn't have compared me to other men's wives. And you definitely wouldn't have cheated on me with someone who fits better into your world. Tanya means nothing to me. Then you're worse than I thought. You risked your marriage for nothing. I closed the box I'd been packing and reached for another. Brandon sat there watching me and I could see him trying to figure out his next move. He was calculating, wondering if there was a way to salvage this. Not because he loved me but because he was starting to realize what he was losing. The house, he said suddenly. We can't afford to keep the house if we divorce. I can, I said. Since I own it. What? I bought this house 3 years ago. The day we got married. I put it in my name alone. We're not paying rent. We've never been paying rent. You've been depositing your half of rent into an account I control, which I'll return to you, minus the actual expenses of maintaining this place. He looked around the bedroom like seeing it for the first time. You bought this house? With cash. No mortgage. It's mine. I've been living in your house this whole time? Yes. And tomorrow you'll start living somewhere else. I'd suggest going to your parents' place. I'm sure they have a guest room. He stood up abruptly. You planned all of this. You set me up. I protected myself. There's a difference. You set yourself up when you decided to cheat. I just made sure I'd be okay when it all fell apart. Who are you? He asked, and for the first time he sounded genuinely curious rather than angry. I'm someone who learned early that money is freedom, I said. I'm someone who got tired of men seeing dollar signs instead of a person. I'm someone who wanted to find love before revealing wealth. And I'm someone who is very, very good at keeping secrets when necessary. What other secrets do you have? I smiled. You'll find out soon enough. Now please leave. I have packing to do. He walked to the door then turned back. Tanya and I are done, by the way. I ended it last night. Good for you. Maybe try being single for a while. Figure out who you actually are instead of who your parents want you to be. My father is already trying to do damage control. He's worried about what you might say, what you might do. He should be worried. What does that mean? It means your father made a powerful enemy last night. And he doesn't even know how powerful yet. Brandon left and I heard him gathering his things from other rooms. He was gone within an hour, the front door closing behind him with finality. I stood in the suddenly quiet house, my house, and felt the last weight of pretending fall away. My phone buzzed with a text from Candace. The board meeting presentation is ready. You're going to blow their minds. I texted back, that's the plan. 1 week. In 1 week, the Hutchinson family would learn the truth. In 1 week, the anonymous investor would step into the light. In 1 week, everything would change. And I couldn't wait. Monday morning started with Jerome filing the divorce papers. By noon, Brandon had been served at his office. By 3 p.m., I had 27 missed calls from various Hutchinson family members. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on preparing for the board meeting. I'd been a Harper for 3 years, carefully maintaining my anonymity while steering Hutchinson Global Technologies toward profitability. Now it was time to show them the woman behind the voice. My apartment downtown was finally set up. 2 bedrooms, 1 converted to an office with 3 large monitors showing real-time market data and company analytics. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The furniture was modern and comfortable, nothing like the modest pieces I'd kept at the house with Brandon. I dressed in a red suit that morning. Real silk, tailored perfectly. Red heels. Simple diamond earrings my mother had left me. My hair was styled, my makeup professional. I looked like the successful investor I was, not the poor nonprofit worker I'd been pretending to be. Candace arrived at 10 a.m., carrying her laptop and a stack of folders. She was tall and sharp, always dressed in bold colors. Today she wore a royal blue dress that made her dark skin glow. "You look like someone who's about to take down an empire," she said, grinning. "Just restructuring one," I replied. "Coffee?" We spent the morning reviewing the presentation for Friday's board meeting. Candace had prepared a detailed analysis of Hutchinson Global Technologies over the past 3 years. The numbers told a clear story. Before my investment, the company had been losing money consistently. After my investment in guidance, they turned profitable and their stock value had increased by 62%. "This slide shows the timeline of major decisions," Candace explained, clicking through the presentation. "Every recommendation from A. Harper, every outcome, every financial impact. It's undeniable. Without your investment and direction, this company would have filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago." And this slide. I pointed to one titled Leadership Assessment. "This is where it gets interesting. We've documented every time Robert ignored your advice and what happened. The Hampton Healthcare Network contract he wanted to pursue. That would have cost them $12 million in losses. The expansion into European markets he pushed for without proper research. You stopped that too, saving them from an $8 million mistake. The pattern is clear. When Robert listens to you, the company succeeds. When he resists, problems arise. So the question becomes, why is he resisting? Pride, Candace said simply. He built this company from nothing. Having to answer to an anonymous investor wounds his ego. He wants full control back, even though he's proven he can't handle it. My phone buzzed. Jerome was calling. "The divorce is moving forward," he said when I answered. "Brandon's lawyer is trying to argue that you misrepresented yourself during the marriage and he deserves compensation for emotional distress." I laughed. Emotional distress? He was cheating on me. I know. It's a desperate move. The evidence of infidelity is overwhelming. He has no legal leg to stand on. His lawyer knows it too. This is just posturing. What about his parents? They haven't hired anyone to intervene in the divorce, which is smart of them. Getting involved would look terrible. But I've heard through colleagues that they're consulting with their own lawyers about other matters. Other matters? They're trying to figure out who you are, what you own, what power you have. They're doing research trying to find leverage. They won't find anything problematic, I said confidently. My business dealings are completely legal. My investments are documented. My taxes are paid. I've been very careful. Good. Because at this point, with the divorce filing and the board meeting coming up, they're going to be looking for any way to undermine you. After Jerome hung up, I turned back to Candace. Robert's trying to find out who I am. He won't succeed, she said. The corporate structure of Apex Holdings is airtight. Multiple layers, registered in a state with strong privacy laws. Without a subpoena, which he has no legal grounds to obtain, he can't trace it back to you. What about facial recognition at the board meetings? You've always appeared with video distortion. And the voice modification software we use is military grade. There's no way to reverse engineer your identity from the video recordings. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. This is Patricia. I showed the message to Candace. She raised an eyebrow. How did she get your number? Probably from Brandon. What do you think? Ignore it. Anything you say to her could be twisted and used later. Let your lawyer handle all communication with that family. But Patricia wasn't done. Over the next hour, I received 7 more texts. We can work this out. Brandon is devastated. You're being unreasonable. At least talk to me before you destroy our family. Don't throw away 3 years over a misunderstanding. We're willing to renegotiate. More money. Better terms. Please, Simone. Be reasonable. I typed out one response and sent it. Have your son direct all communication through his lawyer. This is my final message to any member of your family. Then I blocked the number. Cold, Candace said, but she was smiling. I like it. That afternoon, I had a video call with the other board members of Hutchinson Global Technologies. Not all of them, just the 3 who'd been most supportive of my investment strategy. I appeared as A. Harper, my face pixelated, my voice modified. I've called this meeting to discuss Friday's agenda, I said. I want to ensure you all understand what's at stake. Thomas Chin was the oldest board member, 72 and sharp as ever. Wait, Chin is a forbidden name. Thomas Morrison was the oldest board member, 72 and sharp as ever. He'd been on the board since the company's founding. A. Harper, I appreciate your investment and guidance over the years. But calling for a leadership review? That's explosive. Robert won't take this lightly. Robert needs to understand that he doesn't have unilateral control anymore, I replied. The company has grown beyond his ability to manage alone. We need proper checks and balances. I agree with A. Harper, said Jennifer Wu, the CFO of a major tech firm and a board member for 2 years. The financial data doesn't lie. Every time Robert has ignored A. Harper's advice, we've suffered. Every time he's listened, we've thrived. That pattern should concern all of us. The third person on the call was Michael Torres, a venture capitalist who'd invested in dozens of successful startups. My concern is the timing. Calling this meeting now, right after there's been personal drama between Robert's family and someone. The timing looks vindictive. What personal drama? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Robert mentioned during a call that his daughter-in-law is divorcing his son and making threats. I'm wondering if there's a connection. There's no connection, I said smoothly. My concerns about leadership have been building for months. The timing is coincidental. It wasn't, of course, but they didn't need to know that yet. I just want to make sure we're making business decisions, not personal ones, Michael said. This is entirely about business, I assured him. The company's future depends on strong leadership and smart strategy. If Robert can't handle accountability, he's not the right person to lead us forward. After the call ended, Candace looked concerned. Michael's suspicious. He's going to be the hardest one to convince on Friday. Then we'll have to make sure our evidence is overwhelming, I said. Numbers don't lie. By the time I'm done presenting, he'll see that this is business, even if it started personal. That evening, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "From a friend." I opened it cautiously. "Dear Simone, you don't know me, but I know you. My name is Rachel Kim and I worked at Hutchinson Global Technologies until 6 months ago. I left because of the toxic culture Robert creates. I've heard through colleagues that you're Brandon's wife and that you're divorcing him. I've also heard rumors that you might be the anonymous investor everyone talks about. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, I want you to know that most of the employees would support major changes in leadership. Robert is a brilliant technician but a terrible manager. He takes credit for others' work, he plays favorites, he ignores good advice. If you have any power in that company, please use it. A lot of good people are suffering under his ego. I'm happy to talk more if you're interested. I have documentation of various issues that might be useful." I read the email twice. This was unexpected. An insider willing to provide information. Someone who'd left the company and had nothing to lose. I forwarded the email to Jerome. "Is this safe to pursue?" He called me back immediately. "It could be a trap. Someone from Robert's side trying to get information or create evidence against you. Or it could be legitimate." True. If you want to respond, do it carefully. Don't confirm anything about your identity or your role in the company. Just express general interest in her experience. I typed out a careful response. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm interested in hearing about your experiences at the company. Would you be willing to have a confidential conversation?" Rachel responded within minutes. "Absolutely. When and where?" We agreed to meet Wednesday afternoon at a coffee shop far from the business district. Neutral territory where we were unlikely to be seen by anyone who knew either of us. Tuesday was quiet. I spent the day reviewing financials and preparing additional materials for the board meeting. Jerome called with an update that Brandon's lawyer was requesting a settlement conference, hoping to negotiate rather than go to trial. "What are they offering?" I asked. "They want to keep this out of court. Bad publicity for everyone involved. They're willing to accept a quick divorce with no financial claims from Brandon, as long as you sign an NDA agreeing not to discuss the marriage or the family publicly." "I don't need an NDA. I'm not planning to trash them publicly anyway." "Good. I'll tell them we'll accept those terms. We can have this wrapped up in 30 days. Wednesday morning, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Simone." It was Tanya, the mistress herself. "How did you get my number?" "Brandon gave it to me before he deleted all my contacts." "Listen, I need to talk to you. We have nothing to discuss. Please. Just 5 minutes. I need you to understand something." I should have hung up. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. "Fine. 5 minutes. I'm sorry," she said, and she actually sounded sincere. "I'm sorry for the affair. I'm sorry for hurting you. I never meant for it to go this far." "Then why did it?" "Because I'm weak. Because Brandon pursued me and I was flattered. Because I liked the attention from someone whose family had money and power. I'm not proud of any of it." "Why are you telling me this?" Because Brandon's been calling me, crying, begging me to help him get you back. He thinks if I apologize to you, if I explain that it was all my fault, you'll forgive him. That's ridiculous. I know. That's why I'm calling. To tell you that you shouldn't forgive him. He's not worth it. He used me the same way he used you. He wanted a poor wife to rebel against his parents, and he wanted a rich mistress to make himself feel successful. He's shallow and selfish, and you're better off without him. I appreciate the honesty, but this doesn't change anything. I know. I just wanted you to know the truth. And also, she paused. His parents. They're planning something. I overheard Patricia on the phone yesterday talking about finding ways to discredit you. She mentioned hiring investigators to look into your finances. Let them investigate, I said confidently. They won't find anything illegal. She also mentioned something about the company. About the anonymous investor. She said Robert was obsessed with figuring out who it is because he wants to buy them out. Get rid of them completely. This was interesting. Did she say anything else? Just that Robert is planning to make a big announcement at the board meeting Friday. Something about a new strategic direction that doesn't include outside interference. Thank you for telling me. I really am sorry, Simone. For whatever that's worth. She hung up. I sat there processing the information. Robert was planning a counterattack. He was going to try to take control of the board meeting, make his own announcements and push me out. He had no idea he was walking into an ambush. I called Candace immediately. Change of plans for Friday. We need to go first before Robert has a chance to speak. Can we restructure the agenda? As the one who called the meeting, you have the right to present first. I'll send out an updated agenda today. That afternoon I met Rachel Kim at the coffee shop. She was 35, professionally dressed in a green blazer, and she carried a leather folder thick with documents. Thank you for meeting with me, she said as we sat down at a corner table. I wasn't sure you would. Why did you reach out? I asked directly. Because I've been hearing rumors. People talk. Some of the employees know about your divorce from Brandon. Some of them are putting pieces together. And there's been speculation for years about who the anonymous investor is. When I heard your name, something clicked. What clicked? Simone Robinson. I remembered that name from somewhere, so I did some research. Your mother was Teresa Robinson, one of the best financial advisors in the region. She had a reputation for brilliant investment strategies. When she died, people in financial circles talked about it. And they talked about her daughter who'd inherited her gift for numbers. I said nothing, just waited. I'm not trying to expose you, Rachel continued. I'm trying to help you. If you are the investor everyone's been following for 3 years, then you need to know what you're walking into on Friday. Robert is furious. He's been telling people that the anonymous investor is trying to take over the company. He's been building support among some board members, convincing them that outside interference is bad for business. But the company has thrived under outside guidance. I know that. You know that. The numbers prove it. But Robert is charismatic. He's good at making people doubt their own perceptions. He's going to fight you hard. She opened her folder. These are documents I kept when I worked there. Reports that Robert altered before presenting to the board. Emails where he took credit for strategies you suggested. Financial projections he manipulated to make his ideas look better. If you're going into battle on Friday, you need ammunition. I looked through the documents. They were damning. Clear evidence of Robert's dishonesty and ego. Why are you giving me these? Because I liked working there until Robert made it impossible. Because I know you've been the real force behind the company's success. And because women need to support each other when men try to hold all the power. I took the documents. Thank you. These will be useful. One more thing, Rachel said. Robert's son Brandon. I met him a few times at company events. He's exactly like his father. Charming on the surface, entitled underneath. Whatever you're planning for Friday, don't let guilt about the divorce make you hesitate. That family doesn't deserve your mercy. I smiled. I'm not planning to show any mercy. Friday morning arrived bright and clear. I dressed in a deep maroon suit, tailored perfectly with matching heels. My hair was styled in loose waves. I wore the diamond earrings my mother left me and a simple gold watch. I looked professional, powerful, and nothing like the woman in the cheap green dress who'd sat through that humiliating dinner. Candace met me outside the Hutchinson Global Technologies building at 8:30. The board meeting was scheduled for 9. Ready to make history? She asked. More than ready, I replied. We rode the elevator to the 10th floor where the main conference room was located. The room was large with a long table that could seat 20 people. Windows lined one wall, giving a view of the downtown skyline. At one end was a large screen for presentations. I'd been in this room before, virtually, appearing as a pixelated face on that screen. Today I'd be here in person. The board members started arriving. Thomas Morrison, the elderly board member who'd been there since the beginning. Jennifer Wu, the CFO who'd supported my strategies. Michael Torres, the venture capitalist who'd questioned my motives. 4 other board members I'd worked with over 3 years but never met face to face. And then Robert arrived with his CFO, Philip Sanders. Robert wore a navy suit and an expression of barely controlled anger. He saw Candace and me sitting at the conference table and his face tightened. "Who are you?" he demanded, looking at me. "This is a closed board meeting." "I'm A. Harper," I said simply. "We've been working together for 3 years. I thought it was time we met in person." The room went completely silent. Every person froze, staring at me. Thomas Morrison's mouth actually fell open. Jennifer Wu's eyes went wide. Michael Torres leaned forward, studying my face like he was solving a puzzle. Robert's face went through several colors. White, then red, then purple. "That's impossible," he finally said. "A. Harper is a group of investors. A company. Not a person. Apex Holdings is a shell corporation," I explained calmly. "It's me, my lawyer, and my accountant. I'm the sole investor. I'm the one who put $10 million into this company when you were 3 months from bankruptcy. I'm the one whose advice has kept this company profitable." "And you're Brandon's wife," Robert said, his voice shaking. "This is revenge. This whole meeting is revenge for personal issues." "Actually, I'm Brandon's soon-to-be ex-wife," I corrected. "And this meeting was called because of legitimate business concerns that have nothing to do with my personal life." Patricia's words from the dinner echoed in my head. Someone from the right background. Someone who can help Brandon advance. They'd wanted me gone because they thought I was worthless. Now they were learning exactly how much I was worth. "This is a conflict of interest," Robert blustered. "You can't be on the board and be related to me." "I'm not related to you. I'm divorcing your son. And according to corporate bylaws, my position as an investor gives me the right to attend and speak at board meetings. If you'd like to review the documents you signed 3 years ago, I'm happy to wait." Thomas Morrison spoke up, his voice thoughtful. "Robert, sit down. Let's hear what she has to say. We've been taking A. Harper's advice for 3 years. The fact that she's a person and not a committee doesn't change the quality of that advice." Robert sat, but his face was still furious. Philip, his CFO, looked nervous. The other board members were watching me with a mixture of curiosity and calculation. Candace stood and moved to the computer controlling the presentation screen. "If everyone's ready, we'd like to present our findings on company leadership and strategic direction." The first slide appeared. Hutchinson Global Technologies, 3 years of transformation. I stood and walked to the front of the room, commanding the space the way my mother had taught me. 3 years ago this company was failing. Poor financial management, bad strategic decisions, and declining client confidence were pushing you toward bankruptcy. I invested $10 million and agreed to serve as an advisor. Let's look at what happened next. The next slide showed financial charts. Red lines turning to green. Losses becoming profits. Declining stock value reversing into steady growth. In the first year we restructured your contracts, eliminated redundant operations and focused on your core competencies. Profit increased by 30%. In year 2, we landed 3 major new clients and your stock value increased by 42%. This year you're on track to double your profit from 3 years ago. Michael Torres interrupted. We all know the company improved. The question is, how much of that was your guidance versus Robert's leadership? I'm glad you asked, I said. Candace clicked to the next slide. This chart shows major decisions over the past 3 years. Green marks indicate recommendations from A. Harper that were implemented. Red marks indicate decisions made by Robert against my advice. Blue marks indicate collaborative decisions. The screen showed a timeline with dozens of marks. The green marks were followed by positive outcomes. Increased revenue, successful contracts, good press. The red marks were followed by problems. Failed negotiations, wasted resources, client complaints. The Hampton Healthcare Network contract, I said, pointing to a red mark. Robert wanted to pursue a $15 million contract with them. I advised against it because my research showed they were financially unstable. Robert argued with me in 3 separate board meetings. Eventually the board sided with me. 6 months later, Hampton declared bankruptcy. If we'd signed that contract, we'd have lost millions. I clicked to another slide. The European expansion. Robert wanted to open offices in 4 countries with minimal market research. I suggested starting with 1 country as a test market. He called me overly cautious. The board agreed with me. We opened 1 office in Germany, discovered significant cultural and regulatory challenges, and were able to adjust our approach. If we'd opened 4 offices simultaneously, the cost of failure would have been catastrophic. Slide after slide, I presented evidence. Every time Robert had listened to me, success followed. Every time he'd resisted, problems emerged. The pattern is undeniable, I concluded. This company succeeds when leadership accepts input and guidance. It struggles when ego overrides data. Robert stood up. This is character assassination. You're cherry-picking examples to make me look bad. These aren't cherry-picked, I replied calmly. These are every major decision over 3 years. The data is in the appendix of the presentation. Every board member has access to the full records. You've been manipulating this company, Robert said. Controlling decisions behind a screen. Never showing your face. Now you reveal yourself and expect us to just accept that you've been pulling the strings. I haven't been pulling strings. I've been providing advice based on careful research and financial expertise. The board has always had the final vote. I simply made recommendations. Recommendations that served your own interests. My interests are the company's success, I said. When the company succeeds, my investment grows. When the company fails, I lose money. Everything I've recommended has been about long-term sustainable growth. Jennifer Wu spoke up. Robert, I understand you're upset about the personal situation with your family. But Simone is right about the business results. The numbers don't lie. Harper has been the best thing that happened to this company. This is my company, Robert said, his voice rising. I built this from nothing. I'm not going to let some vengeful ex-daughter-in-law destroy what I created. No one's trying to destroy anything, I said. But the company has outgrown single-person leadership. It needs checks and balances. It needs accountability. What are you proposing? Thomas Morrison asked. I nodded to Candace, who clicked to the next slide. Proposed leadership restructure. I'm proposing that Robert remain as CEO but with enhanced board oversight. Major strategic decisions require board approval. Financial decisions over $1 million require investment committee approval. And company performance is reviewed quarterly with concrete metrics. That's insulting, Robert said. You're trying to strip me of power in my own company. I'm trying to protect the company from unchecked decisions that could harm it, I corrected. You're brilliant at technology, Robert. But you've proven repeatedly that you struggle with financial strategy and long-term planning. This structure lets you focus on what you're good at while ensuring the company remains stable. And what if I refuse? I met his eyes directly. Then I'll vote to remove you as CEO. I hold $10 million in preferred stock, which gives me significant voting power. Combined with board members who've seen the evidence today, I have the votes to make that happen. The room went silent. The threat hung in the air, clear and undeniable. I wasn't bluffing. I had the power to remove him, and everyone in the room knew it. Robert's face had gone pale. You planned this. The marriage, the divorce, everything. You planned this whole thing to take over my company. Actually, the marriage was real, I said quietly. I loved your son. I thought he loved me. I hid my wealth because I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have. But your family made it clear that I wasn't good enough because I appeared poor. You offered me $50,000 to disappear. You insulted everything about me. And your son cheated on me for months while letting you demean me. I walked closer to Robert, my heels clicking on the floor. So yes, I'm angry. Yes, this is partially about how your family treated me. But it's also about business. You're a liability to this company. Your ego endangers everyone who works here. And I'm not going to stand by and watch you destroy something I helped save. Patricia's face from the dinner flashed in my mind. Her condescending pat on my hand. Her assumption that I was worthless. The envelope of cash meant to buy my silence and disappearance. I'm the anonymous investor you've been resenting for 3 years, I continued. I'm the voice on the screen who kept contradicting you. I'm the person who saved this company when no one else would invest. And I'm Brandon's poor, naive wife who wasn't good enough for your family. Surprise. Robert sat down slowly. The fight had gone out of him. He looked older, suddenly smaller. Michael Torres cleared his throat. I need to abstain from this vote. This situation is too personally complicated. That's fair, I said. But I'd ask you to review the evidence objectively. Look at the numbers. Look at the patterns. Then decide if what I'm proposing is reasonable. We spent the next hour going through the details of the proposed restructure. Thomas Morrison asked questions about oversight procedures. Jennifer Wu wanted clarity on the investment committee structure. The other board members raised various concerns, all legitimate and professional. Robert sat silently through most of it. Philip, his CFO, tried to defend him a few times, but even he couldn't argue with the evidence. Finally, Thomas called for a vote. All in favor of implementing the proposed leadership restructure? 5 hands went up immediately. Jennifer, Thomas, and 3 others. Michael abstained as promised. The remaining board member voted no, clearly loyal to Robert. Motion passes 5-1 with 1 abstention, Thomas said. Robert, you'll remain as CEO but under the new oversight structure. We'll review performance quarterly starting next month. Robert stood slowly. I need some air, he said, his voice defeated. He walked out of the conference room without looking at anyone. After he left, several board members came over to introduce themselves properly to me. They shook my hand, thanked me for my investment, and expressed relief that the leadership issues were being addressed. That took courage, Jennifer said quietly. Standing up to him like that. It took necessity, I replied. Someone had to say what everyone was thinking. As the room cleared, Candace and I gathered our materials. You did it, she said. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected. This was a team effort. My phone buzzed with a text from Jerome. Divorce papers signed. It's official. Congratulations on your freedom. I looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, Brandon was processing that his wife had just taken control of his father's company. Somewhere, Patricia was realizing that the woman she tried to buy off was now more powerful than her entire family. And somewhere, I was finally free to be exactly who I was. No more hiding. No more pretending. No more making myself small to fit someone else's expectations. The woman they'd underestimated had just changed everything. The afternoon after the board meeting, I returned to my apartment and collapsed on the couch. The adrenaline that had carried me through the morning was fading, leaving me exhausted but satisfied. My phone had been buzzing nonstop with calls and texts, none of which I answered. Candace had stayed behind to handle paperwork and schedule follow-up meetings. Jerome had sent the finalized divorce documents. And somewhere in the city, the Hutchinson family was reeling from the revelations. I allowed myself 1 glass of wine and a moment to process everything that had happened. 3 years of marriage, ended. 3 years of pretending, finished. 3 years of manipulation and lies, exposed. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. Brandon. Against my better judgment, I answered. What do you want? I need to see you. His voice sounded hollow. Please, Simone. Just once more. There's nothing left to say. There's everything to say. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what you could do. If I had known. If you had known I was rich, you wouldn't have cheated? I interrupted. You wouldn't have let your parents insult me? Brandon, that's exactly the problem. You only value people based on their money. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You fell in love with the idea of rebelling against your parents by marrying someone poor. When that got boring, you cheated with someone rich. You never actually loved me. You loved what I represented. I'm sorry, he said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. I'm sorry for all of it. The affair, the dinner, everything. I was weak. I was shallow. You deserved better. I did, I agreed. And now I'm getting better. The divorce is final, Brandon. We're done. My father wants to sue you. He's talking about manipulation, about corporate espionage, about fraud. My mother she's humiliated. She can't believe the woman she offered money to is actually the one controlling the company. Your father has no grounds to sue me. Everything I did was legal. And your mother's humiliation is her own fault. She judged me based on my appearance without knowing anything about who I actually was. What about us? Brandon asked. 3 years together. That has to mean something. It means I learned valuable lessons about hiding who I am. It means I won't make the same mistake twice. And it means you need to figure out who you are without your parents' influence. I love you, he said, but the words felt empty. No, you don't. You love the idea that you lost something valuable. There's a difference. Goodbye, Brandon. I hung up before he could respond and blocked his number. Whatever guilt I might have felt about the divorce evaporated in that moment. He still didn't understand. He still saw me as a possession he'd lost rather than a person he'd betrayed. That evening Rachel Kim called. I heard about the board meeting. People are already talking. You actually did it? You stood up to Robert Hutchinson. The numbers stood up to him, I replied. I just presented the evidence. Still, that takes guts. Do you know what this means for the company? The employees are actually hopeful for the first time in years. Robert's been untouchable for so long. Now there's accountability. That was the point. Not revenge, though that was satisfying. But actual accountability. What's next for you? Rachel asked. I'm starting my own investment firm. I've been thinking about it for years, but I was afraid to take the leap. Now seems like the perfect time. If you need someone with inside knowledge of tech companies, I'd love to talk. I've been consulting since I left Hutchinson, but I'm looking for something more stable. Send me your resume, I said. Let's have coffee next week and discuss possibilities. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started drafting a business plan. Robinson Capital Management. Named after my mother, built on her principles. A firm that would invest in companies with solid fundamentals and help them grow through strategic guidance. No ego. No manipulation. Just smart business. My phone rang again. This time it was Candace. You need to see this, she said. Check your email. Someone leaked the board meeting story to a business journalist. I opened my email and found a link to an article published just an hour ago. Mystery investor revealed, how Simone Robinson saved and now controls Hutchinson Global Technologies. The article was detailed and accurate. It explained how A. Harper had remained anonymous for 3 years, how the investment had saved the company, and how the Friday board meeting had revealed A. Harper to be Simone Robinson, daughter of respected financial advisor Teresa Robinson, and estranged wife of Robert Hutchinson's son. Who leaked this? I asked. No idea, but it's already getting attention. Your name is trending on business Twitter. People are calling you a genius. Others are saying you're vindictive. Everyone's talking. I read through the comments on the article. Some praised my investment acumen. Others criticized the personal connection to the Hutchinson family. Several called me inspirational for standing up to corporate ego. A few accused me of manipulation. This is actually good for us, Candace continued. The story positions you as a brilliant investor who saved a failing company. Your new firm will have instant credibility. She was right. What could have been a scandal was instead becoming a success story. The poor wife who turned out to be a financial genius. The anonymous investor who stepped into the light and demanded accountability. The woman who refused to be bought off and instead took control. My mother would have been proud. Over the next few days, I received interview requests from business magazines, podcasts, and even a few television shows. I declined most of them, accepting only a profile interview with a respected financial publication. The story would come out in 2 weeks, giving me time to launch Robinson Capital Management properly. On Wednesday, I met with a commercial real estate agent about office space. I found a beautiful suite on the 20th floor of a downtown building. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern design, room for a team of 10. I signed a lease for 2 years. On Thursday, I hired Rachel as my first employee, Director of Technology Investments. She'd help me identify promising companies and assess their potential. On Friday, exactly 1 week after the board meeting, I received a call from Thomas Morrison. Simone, I wanted to personally thank you for what you did, he said. I've been on that board for 20 years. I've watched Robert's ego grow unchecked. I knew we needed change, but I didn't have the courage or the leverage to demand it. You did both. Thank you, Thomas. That means a lot. I also wanted to ask if you'd consider staying on the board. Your insights have been invaluable. The company needs your continued guidance. I'll stay, I decided. But only as a board member, not as CEO or in any executive role. I have my own company to run now. That's all we're asking. Your presence at quarterly reviews will be enough to keep Robert accountable. After the call, I stood at my new office windows and looked out at the city. A month ago, I'd been pretending to be poor, trapped in a failing marriage, hiding everything that made me who I was. Now I was free, successful, and building something entirely my own. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. This is Patricia. I know you blocked my calls. I just wanted to say, you were right. About Brandon. About us. About everything. We underestimated you terribly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just acknowledging that we were wrong. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some bridges didn't deserve to be rebuilt. That weekend, I visited my mother's grave for the first time since the divorce was filed. I brought fresh flowers and sat on the grass beside her headstone. I did it, Mama, I said quietly. Everything you taught me, everything you prepared me for. I used it all. I protected myself. I stood up for myself. And I won. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere a bird sang. The city hummed in the distance. You were right about hiding my wealth until I found real love, I continued. But you were also right that sometimes people show you exactly who they are. Brandon showed me. His family showed me. And I finally stopped pretending not to see it. I stayed there for an hour just talking to her, telling her about the board meeting and the new company and the future I was building. When I finally stood to leave, I felt lighter. The last weight of the past had lifted. Walking back to my car, I made a decision. No more hiding. No more pretending. No more making myself small for anyone. From now on, I would be exactly who I was. Simone Robinson, daughter of Teresa Robinson, brilliant investor, successful businesswoman, and someone who refused to be underestimated ever again. 2 weeks after the board meeting, the article about me appeared in Financial Quarterly magazine. The headline read, "The Strategic Investor, How Simone Robinson Built Wealth in Silence and Changed Corporate Leadership." The article was thorough, tracing my journey from my mother's teachings through my early investments to the Apex Holdings creation and the Hutchinson Global Technologies turnaround. The journalist had done extensive research, interviewing business associates, former colleagues, and even some of my investment clients from the nonprofit. What surprised me most was the tone. Instead of sensationalizing the personal drama with Brandon and his family, the article focused on my investment philosophy and business acumen. There was one paragraph about the marriage and divorce, positioned simply as context, not as the main story. Robinson represents a new generation of investors, the article concluded. Smart, strategic, and uninterested in traditional displays of wealth. Her approach of anonymous investment followed by active guidance has proven remarkably successful. As she launches Robinson Capital Management, many are watching to see what she'll do next. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My email filled with requests from companies seeking investment, from individuals wanting financial advice, from women asking how I'd built my wealth. My phone rang constantly with opportunities, partnerships, and interview requests. I hired Candace full-time as my chief financial officer. Rachel brought in 2 colleagues from her consulting network, both brilliant analysts with tech expertise. By the end of the month, Robinson Capital Management had a team of 5 and a pipeline of potential investments worth reviewing. But not everything was smooth. The fallout from the board meeting rippled through the Hutchinson family in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Robert stopped attending board meetings in person, appearing only by video call. When he did appear, he was quiet, diminished. The oversight structure I'd implemented was working. Financial decisions were reviewed carefully. Strategic plans required board approval. The company continued to grow, but now it was truly a team effort rather than one man's ego project. Brandon, I heard through various sources, had taken a leave of absence from the company. He'd moved back in with his parents temporarily. Tanya had transferred to a different department to avoid the awkwardness. The affair was apparently fully over, killed by reality rather than sustained by secrecy. Patricia, surprisingly, reached out one more time. This time through Jerome, requesting a formal meeting. I debated refusing, but curiosity won. We met at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon. Patricia arrived alone, dressed simply in a navy dress. She looked older than I remembered, tired. "Thank you for seeing me," she said as we sat down. "I know you have every reason to refuse." "Why did you want to meet?" I asked directly. "To apologize properly. Not through text. Face to face." She folded her hands on the table. "Simone, what we did at that dinner was cruel. Offering you money, insulting your background, treating you like you were worthless. It was wrong." "Yes, it was." I let my concerns about Brandon's future override basic human decency. I let Robert's opinions about proper society matches influence how I saw you. I judged you based on your clothes and your job without ever trying to know who you actually were. "You tried to buy me," I said flatly. "Like I was a problem that could be solved with cash." "I know." She looked down at her hands. "I've spent 2 weeks thinking about why I did that. The truth is, I was afraid. Brandon seemed happy with you, happier than he'd been with any woman from our social circle. But you didn't fit the image I had for his life. So I tried to remove you rather than questioning why the image mattered so much. And now I see that the image was meaningless. Brandon is miserable. Robert is diminished. Our family is fractured. And the woman we tried to throw away is thriving. We didn't just underestimate you. We revealed our own worst qualities." I said nothing, just waited. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Patricia continued. I'm not asking for a relationship or for us to be friends. I'm simply acknowledging that we were wrong. Terribly, cruelly wrong. And that you had every right to respond the way you did. I didn't destroy your family out of revenge, I said quietly. I did what was best for the company. The fact that it hurt you was a consequence, not the goal. I believe that. Which makes it worse in a way. We treated you like an enemy when you were actually trying to help. Even with the company, you were making decisions that benefited everyone, including Robert, but he couldn't see past his ego. The waiter came and we ordered tea. After he left, Patricia spoke again. Brandon asks about you. Wonders how you're doing. He's finally starting to understand what he lost. He lost a wife who would have supported him through anything, I said. He lost at the moment he cheated. The rest was just details. I know. And I enabled his worst qualities by emphasizing status over character. That's something I have to live with. We sat in silence for a moment, sipping our tea. There was nothing left to say, really. The apology was offered, acknowledged, but not accepted. Some hurts ran too deep for simple forgiveness. I hope your new company succeeds, Patricia finally said. I've been reading about your approach to investing. Your mother would be proud. She would, I agreed. We parted cordially but coldly. As I watched her leave, I felt no satisfaction in her obvious regret. I felt nothing at all, actually. She was simply a person I used to know, connected to a life I'd left behind. That evening, I had dinner with Candace and Rachel to celebrate our first month as Robinson Capital Management. We'd reviewed 15 companies, invested in 3, and were already seeing promising returns. To new beginnings, Candace toasted. To women supporting women, Rachel added. To being exactly who we are, I finished. The next week brought an unexpected call. Thomas Morrison wanted to meet privately. I have a proposal, he said when we met at his office. Several members of the board and I have been discussing the future of Hutchinson Global Technologies. Robert is struggling. The oversight is working, but his heart isn't in it anymore. He's talking about early retirement. That's his choice to make, I said. We'd like you to consider becoming CEO. I stared at him. What? You saved this company. You understand it better than anyone. You have the financial expertise and the strategic vision. The board trusts you. Employees respect you. It makes sense. I just started my own company, which could continue under your leadership. Robinson Capital could even work in partnership with Hutchinson Global. You wouldn't have to choose. I shook my head. Thomas, I appreciate the offer. But I don't want to run that company. I invested to protect my investment and ensure good leadership. That doesn't mean I want to be the leader. Then who do you suggest? Jennifer Wu. She's brilliant, she understands the technology, and she has the business sense to match. Promote her to CEO. Keep the oversight structure in place. Let Robert retire with dignity. That's my recommendation. Thomas considered this. That could work. Jennifer would be excellent. And I'll stay on the board to provide continuity and guidance. But from a distance, not day-to-day operations. We shook hands on it. 2 weeks later, the board officially appointed Jennifer Wu as the new CEO of Hutchinson Global Technologies. Robert announced his retirement, effective immediately. The company's stock price rose 5% on the news. I attended the press conference virtually, appearing briefly to express support for Jennifer's appointment and Robert's contributions to the company's foundation. It was diplomatic, professional, and final. My time being personally involved with that company was essentially over. Meanwhile, Robinson Capital was thriving. We'd made our 4th investment, this time in a healthcare startup with revolutionary patient management software. Rachel's due diligence had been impeccable. The founders were smart, ethical, and focused on solving real problems rather than chasing valuations. This is what I wanted to build, I told my team at our weekly meeting. A firm that invests in substance over hype. That helps good companies grow without ego getting in the way. That proves you can be successful and ethical simultaneously. You're becoming a role model, Candace said. I've had 3 journalists ask me about doing profiles on women in finance, specifically mentioning you as inspiration. Make sure they understand I'm not special, I replied. I had advantages, a mother who taught me well, opportunities to invest, luck and timing. Other women can do exactly what I did if they have support and resources. That's exactly what makes you a good role model, Rachel said. You acknowledge privilege while still demonstrating excellence. That month, I was invited to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference. I almost declined, uncomfortable with the attention, but Candace convinced me to accept. The conference was held in a large hotel ballroom, attended by over 500 women from various industries. I was scheduled to speak on a panel about investing and wealth building. As I walked onto the stage and looked out at all those faces, many young and eager, some older and experienced, I thought about my mother. About her teachings. About her insistence that money was freedom but also responsibility. "I'm going to start with something my mother told me," I said when it was my turn to speak. "Money is a tool, not an identity. Don't let it define you and don't let it attract the wrong people." I talked about hiding my wealth, not to encourage dishonesty, but to emphasize the importance of being loved for who you are, not what you have. I talked about the marriage, briefly, as a lesson in recognizing when someone's values don't align with yours. But mostly I talked about building wealth strategically. About research and patience. About taking calculated risks. About the difference between investing and gambling. About the importance of ethics in business decisions. The response was overwhelming. Women lined up afterward to ask questions, share their own stories, request advice. I stayed for 2 hours talking to as many as I could, giving out my card to those who wanted to follow up. One young woman, maybe 23, waited until the end. "My mother died last year," she said. "She left me some money and I don't know what to do with it. But hearing you talk about your mother, about following her teachings, it made me think I should honor mine by being smart with what she left me." I spent 20 minutes with her, giving basic guidance and referring her to resources for financial education. As she walked away, thanking me profusely, I felt my mother's presence. This was why she taught me so carefully. Not just for my own benefit but so I could pass the knowledge forward. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened a bottle of wine and sat by the windows. The city glowed below me. Somewhere out there, Brandon was learning to live with his choices. Patricia was learning that money couldn't buy respect. Robert was learning that ego had cost. And I was learning that success meant more when built on authenticity rather than pretense. My phone buzzed with an email notification. A company I'd been researching, a clean energy startup, wanted to meet about potential investment. Tomorrow's schedule already included 2 client meetings and a lunch with a journalist writing about ethical investing. Robinson Capital Management was exactly 3 months old and already making waves in the investment community. Not because we were flashy or aggressive, but because we were smart, careful, and committed to doing things right. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window. "We did it, Mama. Exactly the way you taught me." 6 months after the board meeting that changed everything, I stood in my office at Robinson Capital Management and looked out at the city with a sense of peace I'd never felt before. The firm now employed 12 people, managed over $40 million in investments, and had a reputation for careful, ethical, high-return strategies. But the real victory wasn't in the numbers. It was in the freedom to be exactly who I was without apology or pretense. My phone rang. It was Jennifer Wu, calling from Hutchinson Global Technologies. "Simone, I wanted to give you an update," she said. "We just closed the biggest contract in company history. A 5-year deal with a major healthcare network. The stock price hit an all-time high this morning." "That's fantastic, Jennifer. You've done incredible work." "We've done incredible work. The foundation you helped build made this possible. The board asked me to personally thank you." After we hung up, I felt satisfaction, but not the kind that came from control. I'd helped that company, guided it, even fought for it. But I'd let go of ownership over its success. Jennifer was leading it now, brilliantly, and I was simply a supportive board member and investor. That evening, I had plans to attend a technology conference downtown. Robinson Capital was considering investing in several AI startups, and I wanted to meet the founders personally. Research, due diligence, relationship building, the fundamentals my mother had taught me. I dressed in a vibrant blue dress, bold and professional. My hair was styled, my makeup was perfect, and I wore shoes that cost more than my entire wardrobe from my marriage to Brandon. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I enjoyed looking powerful. The conference was held at the convention center, hundreds of entrepreneurs and investors networking over cocktails and presentations. I recognized several faces from the industry, including Michael Torres, the venture capitalist from the Hutchinson board. "Simone," he said, approaching me with a smile, "I owe you an apology. When you revealed yourself at that board meeting, I questioned your motives. I was wrong. You were exactly what that company needed." "Thank you, Michael. That means a lot. I've been following your firm's work. You're making smart choices. Conservative but not timid. Ethical but not naive. If you ever want to collaborate on a deal, call me." We exchanged contact information and talked strategy for a few minutes before the keynote presentation started. I found a seat near the front, ready to learn about the latest innovations in artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's when I saw him. A man in his late 30s, standing near the stage, reviewing notes for what appeared to be a presentation. He was tall, had warm brown skin, and wore a green suit that suggested confidence without pretension. Something about the way he carried himself caught my attention. The conference organizer introduced him. Our next speaker is Dante Washington, founder of Nexus AI Solutions, a company revolutionizing how small businesses implement artificial intelligence. Dante took the stage and immediately commanded it. His presentation was brilliant, technical enough to be substantial, accessible enough to be engaging. He talked about democratizing AI, making powerful tools available to companies that couldn't afford custom solutions. His passion was obvious, his vision clear. I found myself leaning forward, genuinely engaged. This was exactly the kind of company Robinson Capital looked for. Innovative technology, ethical mission, strong leadership. After the presentation, I approached him during the networking break. Mr. Washington, I'm Simone Robinson from Robinson Capital Management. Your presentation was impressive. Thank you, he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm and professional. Robinson Capital. I've read about your firm. You invested in health tech solutions, right? That patient management software company? We did. They're performing well. I'm not surprised. That software is brilliant. Are you looking for new investments? Always. When the right opportunity presents itself. We talked for 20 minutes, discussing his company's technology, their business model, their plans for growth. Dante was smart, careful, and realistic about challenges. He wasn't overpromising or exaggerating. He was simply confident in what he'd built. Would you be interested in a formal meeting? I asked. My team would love to review your business plan and financial projections. Absolutely. I've been looking for the right investment partner. Someone who understands both the technology and the business ethics behind it. We exchanged information and agreed to meet the following week. As I walked away, I felt energized in a way I hadn't felt about business in a long time. This was what investing should be, finding brilliant people doing meaningful work and helping them succeed. The following week, Dante came to our offices with his CFO and Chief Technology Officer. Rachel conducted the technical assessment while Candace reviewed the financials. I asked questions about company culture, employee treatment, and long-term vision. Everything checked out. The technology was sound, the finances were solid, and the leadership was ethical. We offered a $2 million investment for a 15% stake in the company. Dante accepted immediately. This is exactly the partnership we were hoping for, he said. Not just money but strategic guidance from someone who understands what we're trying to build. Over the next few months, I worked closely with Dante and his team. We met weekly to review progress, discuss challenges, and plan strategy. The professional relationship was strong, built on mutual respect and shared values. But something else was developing too. A friendship, initially based on similar backgrounds and experiences. Dante had also grown up with a single mother who taught him about resilience and hard work. He'd also built his success carefully, refusing to compromise his principles for quick growth. He'd also experienced relationships where people valued his company more than him as a person. It's exhausting sometimes, he said during one of our lunch meetings. Dating when you're successful. You never know if someone likes you or likes your status. I understand completely, I replied, thinking about Brandon and all the assumptions that had come with hiding my wealth. I spent 3 years pretending to be poor just to find genuine love. Didn't work out, obviously. I heard about that situation. The board meeting that shocked the business world. That took courage. It took necessity. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself even when it's uncomfortable. We started having dinners after our business meetings, conversations that stretched late into the evening. We talked about everything: childhood, family, dreams, fears, business philosophy, personal values. It was easy and natural, the kind of connection I'd been searching for during my entire marriage to Brandon. But I was cautious. I'd been burned before. I'd hidden who I was and been betrayed. I'd revealed who I was and watched relationships crumble. Trust didn't come easily anymore. Dante seemed to understand without me having to explain. He never pushed, never pressured. He simply showed up consistently, reliable, honest, and genuinely interested in who I was beyond my investment portfolio. 3 months into our business partnership, Nexus AI Solutions landed a major contract that would triple their revenue. Dante called me immediately. We did it. The Microsoft partnership came through. This changes everything. Congratulations, I said, genuinely thrilled for him. This is what you've been working toward. I couldn't have done it without your guidance. The strategic positioning, the financial restructuring, the confidence you gave us to pursue this. Thank you, Simone. We celebrated with his team at our offices, champagne and congratulations flowing freely. As the party wound down and people started leaving, Dante pulled me aside. Can I take you to dinner? He asked. Not a business dinner. A real dinner. Just the two of us. I hesitated, my instincts warning me to be careful. But something in his eyes, the sincerity and patience, made me want to take the risk. Yes, I said. I'd like that. Our first real date was at a small restaurant, nothing fancy or showy. We sat in a corner booth and talked for 4 hours. About dreams and disappointments. About what success actually meant. About the loneliness that sometimes came with building something significant. I'm not going to pretend I don't know you're successful, Dante said at one point. You're brilliant at what you do. You've built something impressive. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because you're funny and insightful and you challenge me to think differently. The money and the company are just context. How do I know that's true? I asked, needing honesty. You don't, not yet. But I can show you over time. I can be consistent and patient and let you see who I actually am. That's all anyone can do. We dated slowly, carefully. No rushing into anything. No grand declarations. Just steady presence and growing trust. He met my team and they approved. I met his family and his mother hugged me like I already belonged. He talks about you constantly, she whispered to me at their family dinner. Not about your business. About your laugh, your intelligence, your strength. He admires you as a person. 8 months after the board meeting that ended my marriage, I was sitting in Dante's office reviewing quarterly reports when he suddenly closed his laptop and looked at me seriously. I need to tell you something, he said. My heart jumped. Here it was. The revelation that would ruin everything. The truth I'd been waiting for. I'm falling in love with you, he continued. And I need you to know that before we go any further. I need you to know that this is real for me. That it's not about business or connections or anything except you. I stared at him, my walls wanting to go up, my heart wanting to believe him. I don't need an answer right now, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. Because hiding things, even good things, never works out well. The irony of that statement, coming from someone who didn't know I'd hidden my wealth for 3 years, made me laugh. No, hiding things definitely doesn't work out well. So what do you think? He asked, vulnerability clear in his eyes. I paused, considering carefully. I think I'm falling for you too. And that terrifies me because I've been wrong before. I've trusted before and been hurt. But you're showing me something different. Something real. I'll keep showing you, he promised. Every day. For as long as it takes for you to fully trust this. We continued dating, building something solid and genuine. He never asked about my finances beyond what was relevant to our business relationship. He never suggested I should invest in his friends' companies or use my connections for his benefit. He simply showed up, consistently and authentically, exactly as he'd promised. 1 year after the board meeting, Robinson Capital Management had grown to manage over $100 million in investments. We'd helped launch 15 companies, created hundreds of jobs, and built a reputation as the firm that cared about both profit and purpose. I stood in my office, now expanded to take up half the floor, looking out at the city I'd conquered on my own terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Dante. Dinner tonight? I have something to ask you. I smiled, feeling a flutter of anticipation mixed with the solid foundation of trust we'd built. Whatever he wanted to ask, I was ready to hear it. The woman who'd been offered $50,000 to disappear, who'd been told she wasn't good enough, who'd been underestimated and dismissed, had built an empire on her own terms. Had found love that valued her for who she truly was. Had created a life that honored her mother's teachings while writing her own story. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Rising higher than anyone who'd tried to hold me down could have imagined. And I was just getting started.